This last offseason, we saw one of the biggest decisions in NHL draft history, with Gavin McKenna leaving the WHL for the NCAA. Entering the year being one of the most hyped prospects over the last decade, putting up mammoth production in the WHL, the expectations were high. And with him also showing off pretty well in his NCAA debut versus Arizona State, the expectations continued to soar. But now 6 games into Gavin McKenna's draft season, things have gotten a bit more interesting. After watching a few games of Gavin McKenna to start out the year, my thoughts on him are pretty complicated right now. So we're going to go through the good, the bad, and the sometimes ugly with highlights and full scouting reports. So make sure you guys watch till the end for the full McKenna analysis so far, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content and prospect content just like this as we lead up to the 2026 draft next summer. I wager to say that Gavin McKenna heading into this season was the most hyped NCAA prospect ever. I mean, we've had some fantastic ones like Adam Fantilli and Macklin Celebrini, but it seemed like in terms of the high-profile guys, especially heading into their draft year, McKenna has been at the very top, at least when it comes to the attention that he's been receiving. And rightfully so, with the production he's earned, with the plays that he's been able to create, that reputation that's followed him is there for very good reason. I mean, you see what he was capable of last year in the WHL in his final season, getting 41 goals, 88 assists for 129 points, plus in the playoffs, having 38 points in 16 games. Pretty decent there. Seriously though, that type of production for a 17-year-old in the playoffs is insane to think about, but that's the type of play, that's the type of level that McKenna was showing very early on. And that wasn't even in his draft year, so you have that coming into this season with all that hype to see what he was able to do in his first season in the NCAA, and even though I think McKenna has had some good moments, I think it's been largely disappointing compared to where the hype was truly at. There's so much talk around McKenna that there's already discussions right now about how good of a first overall pick he is if he isn't up to that McDavid type of caliber 6 games into his NCAA season. But as you can see, McKenna hasn't exactly lit the world on fire to start out his NCAA career, getting 6 points, 5 assists in 6 games, with a -4 though, and also a lot of those points coming on the power play. To be more specific here when it comes to the points breakdown, through 6 games, 4 of Gavin McKenna's 6 points are on the power play, and of those 2 even strength points, one of those was a secondary assist in overtime, so not exactly the most glowing 5-on-5 representation. But that doesn't really surprise me, because Gavin McKenna has been an absolute weapon on Penn State's power play, and that is quite frankly where I think Gavin McKenna has played his best hockey. Not really a surprise too much, but when McKenna has that extra space, when he has just that extra little bit of leg room, what he's been able to do, how dynamic he's been able to be, that's when McKenna is showing what he is capable of most. With that vision, with that creativity, he just has it all at such a high-end level. Again, when he gets that extra little bit of space and time, McKenna can just do so much with it. That combined with some good chemistry with Penn State's other top scorers, and that power play ability has come as advertised. It was already a weapon in Medicine Hat, but it's translated pretty well over to the NCAA. But let's get into the part that is a little bit more complicated here, and that is the 5-on-5 play with Gavin McKenna so far. He's had some good moments here and there, but only one 5-on-5 point through 6 games, I do think is a bit of a disappointment. And considering that most of his points are coming on the power play, I think only being a point per game is far short of where a lot of people expected him to be. There was a lot of conversation about McKenna lighting it up, putting like Paul Kariya type numbers, getting past Celebrini and Fantilli and Jack Eichel, and I never quite saw that happening. I saw him getting around that Celebrini range though, of around 60 points by the end of the season, having a fantastic freshman year, but I think the expectations certainly have been a bit too high for what McKenna is capable of. I absolutely adore watching McKenna play, and he has, of course, lit up the WHL, but I think because of that, people were expecting unbelievable point totals, especially for a very offensive team in Penn State, but that's just not really been the case. Now, granted, there's been a lot of opportunities created by McKenna that haven't been finished upon, but I think you'd want a bit more, especially in the goal-scoring department. But once Penn State is out of the power play and they're back to 5-on-5 play, that's where I think the warts in McKenna's game start to appear, because in a lot of ways, I think McKenna is a pretty similar player to what he was in the WHL last year, just without the crazy point totals. I think people have to remember, especially now in the CHL with a lot less talent at the top end, the jump from that to the NCAA is pretty massive. And even though we've seen some players really transition well, Celebrini was pretty instantly a top player in that league, it's going to be a lot harder for some others, especially for a player like McKenna who's a lot less physically built. The two things that have worried me the most when it comes to McKenna are the defensive play, the effort there, and the physicality, because that's something that McKenna didn't really have to worry about too much in the WHL. It's a lower league in competition, and also especially in terms of ages, so those guys aren't quite as built physically as what McKenna's going to be facing every day in the NCAA, especially big teams like Long Island University, Clarkson. They're going to have a lot of weapons there physically that are going to make it harder for McKenna, and I think that's kind of been felt in his play. He's not quite as adaptable as he used to be. He doesn't quite have that time and space that he used to be able to work with. The biggest thing that has worried me so far is the lack of much physical engagement from him. He's somebody that in the WHL didn't really have to worry about that as much. He had the time and space. He didn't really need to put in the work and put in the effort to make those plays. Now he has to, and I think he's learning on the fly just how much he needs to do so. He's gotten by okay so far, but there's a lot of times where the puck is loose. He has the opportunity to go for it, but just isn't really able to or willing to put the physical work in. There's a lot of board battles in the NCAA. It is such a hard league to score in, and I think McKenna is starting to realize just how hard it is. But there are multiple times where McKenna easily has a lane to pick up the puck, try to create a turnover, try to create some physical intensity on the boards, and he just doesn't put in that work. He doesn't want to go into those battles, and that's a worry for me, especially when you look towards the NHL, where basically the entire game is puck battles and draws and trying to win those 1v1s. Is McKenna going to be able to do that? Well, I would say so far in the NCAA, it's pretty much 50-50. Going back to his time in the WHL, McKenna was certainly outscoring his problems for sure, but when he was at his worst, he was kind of a bit of a floater out there, wanting a lot of his teammates to do the work for him so that he could end up setting up that fantastic play in the end. That's not necessarily an issue, but in terms of that first overall pick, you want somebody that can kind of do it all for you, but I think McKenna was kind of a bit limited then, and still a bit limited now. There are still times where I think McKenna has some good defensive plays, but they're mostly drawn from his solid stick positioning, good defensive IQ, and not necessarily any muscle that he has, because that I think has kind of been the issue. Obviously, still a lot of time for McKenna to grow, both in terms of maturity and physicality, so I'm not completely worried yet, but in terms of the game that we've seen out of McKenna and why he's not scoring a bit more, I think in just terms of the pure effort and the pure intensity, it's not quite been at the level that I was wanting to see out of him, at least so far. But I will say, that's a big reason why I think the NCAA will be good for him, because I would rather him try to fight through these physical battles in the NCAA than in the WHL, especially for a team like Penn State that has the facilities, the training facilities that they have. He's going to have all the opportunity to bulk up, to get stronger, to get better in those board battles. But at the end of the day, if he's not putting in the effort, if he's not wanting to engage in those wars, then he won't win any of them. Let's say we throw him into the NHL today and he's playing how he's playing defensively. I think it would be hard for a lot of coaches to trust him in those important situations, and that's kind of been the case. I mean, in that last game that he played versus Long Island University I was watching, he didn't play the last 10 minutes of that game. So certainly in terms of Penn State's trust, they're not putting him in the defensive situations and hoping he wins them, because that's, again, not really been the case. But that's just the thing, is that in McKenna's game, he'll have a full shift here where he starts the shift with a giveaway and then later on has a magnificent pass that creates a great scoring chance. And that's kind of the game that McKenna is playing right now. It's high risk, it's high energy, it's high event, and it's super entertaining, but also has some downsides that often leave his team in some pretty bad situations. But this is why I stress that a step up into college hockey can be so important for these top end players, because I think this will ultimately be a good thing for McKenna in the end, especially if he's able to bulk up, get a bit faster in his decision making defensively, and engage a bit more of his body. Then that's a huge success towards his NHL future, and something I don't know if he would have developed fully in the WHL. It's clear and obvious for everyone to see. There's no hiding from those mistakes, especially as so much of the NCAA gets closer and closer in competition. Even a team like Long Island University almost beat Penn State this last weekend. So that's the type of talent that every single team can bring. So those turnovers can be quite a bit costly. In general, though, I think Gavin McKenna is kind of just the epitome of what Penn State is right now, because they're kind of a loose run and gun type of team that defensively has some issues sometimes, especially in the goaltending department, but they're just a wild circus of a team, and I highly implore you, if you get the chance, to watch them play, because they're a lot of fun, and it's not just because of McKenna. There's a few questions that I'll answer right here. Do I think Gavin McKenna coming into the year had way too many expectations that were way too lofty for him? Absolutely. He still can reach some pretty good point totals. He's still a point per game, even at his worst right now. So I think that's pretty good news for him long term. But I don't think he's going to be quite reaching the 80-point plateaus that a lot of people, a lot of folks were expecting. I'm going to say this too right now. I think that's okay too. I don't think McKenna needs to be at the Paul Correa type of level to still be a really good player and still be someone we should appreciate. I think McKenna is a great example of just how much the expectations can stray people, because a point per game in the NCAA is still really, really good. This is a super hard league to score in, and even though Fink has some pretty good teammates around him, sure, he's had to deal with some issues and had to deal with some growing pains. He's still 17 years old, doesn't even turn 18 until December, and wouldn't have been even in this league if it weren't for the recent rule changes. As of now, I still have Gavin McKenna as my #1 prospect in the 2026 draft, and I'm not going to declare anything crazy until we get a lot further in. But even though McKenna has shown some rough things, I'm still a major fan of the game that he plays, still a major fan of what he is capable of, because when he is at his best, when he is making those high-end plays, there's very few people on this earth that can do that consistently like McKenna can. So if you go onto McKenna's elite prospects and see that he's just a point per game, yes, there are some issues that he will have to work out, but I wouldn't sound the alarm bells yet. I wouldn't say that he's this bust or anything. Not even 2 months, month into his NCAA season. It's still a very long way to go, a long process for him, and I am hopeful that these small issues that could build up will hopefully be alleviated before they become major. But those are my thoughts on Gavin McKenna so far this season. Just some things I wanted to point out, some issues, some good things in his game that I wanted to draw some attention to, but hopefully you guys did end up enjoying. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and a big shout out to the channel members here. If you want to become a channel member, it's just a couple bucks a month. Hit the join button by the subscribe button or hit the link in the description down below, and you can get exclusive videos every single week, plus exclusive member polls you can be a part of, and exclusive emoji. And a big thank you to all the channel members. Their names will be all up here on the screen. If you guys want to watch some more videos, you can click up here to the 2026 draft playlist with a ton of content there for you to watch. If you want some more on the 2026 draft, you can also share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online and get the Gavin McKenna talk out to them. And I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure you have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.